October 2001. Indianapolis. Two young lives were about to be brutally extinguished in a crime that would shock the nation. Andrew Cataldi, 25. Tricia Nordman, 19. Roommates living in a modest apartment on the west side of the city. On October 11th, neighbors heard what sounded like firecrackers. They had no idea they were listening to executions. When police arrived, they discovered a scene of calculated violence. Both victims had been shot multiple times at close range. The killer had used a .22 caliber pistol. The shots were precise. Professional. This wasn't a crime of passion. Investigators quickly focused on someone who knew both victims intimately. Sarah Jo Pender, 21 years old, Andrew's ex-girlfriend, and according to prosecutors, the mastermind behind a double execution. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. Sarah had manipulated her new boyfriend into becoming her weapon. Richard Hull, her accomplice, would later testify that Sarah orchestrated everything. The plan, the timing, the murders. Sarah maintained her innocence throughout the trial, but the jury saw through what they believed was an elaborate performance. The evidence was overwhelming. Motive, opportunity, and a co-conspirator willing to expose her secrets. March 2002. The verdict. Guilty on 2 counts of murder. The sentence, life without parole. At 20, building on what we covered about her conviction, Sarah Pender now faced life behind bars at Rockville Correctional Facility. But Sarah had no intention of serving her sentence. She immediately began plotting her escape. Her target was Scott Spittler, a married correctional officer with 2 decades of experience. Spittler was known for being professional, but Sarah Pender was about to change that. She began a calculated seduction campaign, flirting during interactions, building emotional connections. Gradually, Spittler fell under her influence. The veteran officer began breaking protocol. By August 2008, Pender had convinced Spittler to help her escape. The plan was audacious. Spittler would smuggle her out in a laundry cart. On August 15th, as evening shift began, Sarah made her move. Hidden beneath dirty linens, she was wheeled past multiple security checkpoints. Guards waved them through. No one suspected a thing. Within minutes, Sarah Pender had vanished into the Indiana night. When guards discovered her empty cell the next morning, chaos erupted. Rockville Correctional Facility went into immediate lockdown. Alarms blared throughout the complex. A convicted double murderer was now free, and authorities had no idea where she had gone. As we covered in the last chapter, Sarah Pender had accomplished the impossible. Now came the even harder challenge: staying free. In a world of surveillance cameras and digital footprints, how do you simply disappear? Pender's first move was brilliant in its simplicity. She didn't run far. While police scoured highways and airports, she hid in plain sight just miles from the prison. Safe houses. Fake identities. A network of accomplices who risked everything to harbor a convicted killer. The transformation began immediately. New hair color. Different clothes. A completely fabricated background. But changing your appearance is easy compared to erasing your entire existence. Social security numbers. Birth certificates. Credit histories. Creating a ghost identity required serious connections. The underground network that aided Pender wasn't random strangers. These were people with their own reasons to stay invisible. Each safe house became a temporary refuge, never staying long enough to establish patterns. Meanwhile, law enforcement was following every possible lead, but they were always one step behind. Surveillance cameras captured nothing. Informants had no information. It was as if Sarah Pender had simply ceased to exist. But creating a new identity was only the beginning. Now she had to live it. The next phase would test every aspect of her carefully constructed facade. As we covered, Sarah Pender had vanished without a trace after her impossible escape. Within 48 hours, the case landed on the desk of the most feared manhunters in America. The United States Marshals Service took control of the investigation. These weren't local cops anymore. These were the professionals who never stop hunting. Sarah Pender's face was about to become known coast to coast. America's Most Wanted picked up her story. Millions of viewers would see her photograph. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Tips flooded in from across the nation. Every lead had to be investigated. She was reportedly spotted in Florida. Agents rushed south only to find nothing. Another sighting in Colorado. Another dead end. Texas, Nevada, Michigan. Each false lead burned resources and precious time. The manhunt was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But Sarah Pender remained a ghost. Every trail went cold. The professionals were being outplayed by a convicted murderer with no training. What they didn't know was that Sarah had mastered the art of becoming invisible. For 7 long years, Sarah Pender lived as a ghost among us. Chicago became her hunting ground, a massive city where one more face could disappear into the crowd. She crafted new identities like a master forger crafts documents, each one carefully constructed. Her first alias was tested in the most intimate way possible. She became a nanny, caring for children while America's Most Wanted hunted her. The irony was suffocating. Every employer became a potential threat. Every background check a loaded weapon. She perfected the art of being forgettable, invisible in plain sight. But paranoia became her constant companion. Every knock at the door could be her last. She changed apartments like most people change clothes, never staying long enough to leave memories. 7 years of looking over her shoulder. 7 years of fake smiles and borrowed names. Friends were luxuries she couldn't afford. Trust was a weapon pointed at her own heart. She built walls so high that even she forgot who lived behind them. But even the most perfect disguise has an expiration date. After 7 years of running, Sarah Pender was about to discover that someone had been watching all along. By December 2014, Sarah Pender had been a ghost for over 7 years. But even the most careful fugitive makes one fatal mistake. The call came into the tip line on a cold December morning. Someone who knew Sarah's secret life was ready to talk. After 7 years of dead ends and false leads, investigators finally had what they'd been searching for: a real address in Chicago. The betrayal came from someone in her inner circle, someone she trusted with her most dangerous secret. Federal marshals surrounded the run-down Chicago apartment building just before dawn. This time, there would be no escape. As we covered earlier, Sarah had become a master of reinvention. But on December 15th, All her false identities crumbled. When they knocked down the door, Sarah Pender was cornered. For the first time in 7 years, she had nowhere to run. The woman who had evaded capture for nearly 8 years surrendered without resistance. The chase was finally over. News of Sarah's capture sent shockwaves through law enforcement. One of America's most wanted was finally in custody. Building on the underground network we discussed, investigators now turned their attention to Sarah's accomplices. The web was unraveling. Those who had harbored America's most wanted fugitive now faced federal charges. The price of loyalty had become devastatingly clear. Sarah Pender was transported back to Indiana Women's Prison, this time with additional security measures. Her days of freedom were over. The manhunt that had consumed resources for nearly 8 years